So, good morning, everyone. My name is Patrina Pelton Smith, and I am the principal consultant and CEO of the Business of Charity. We are here this morning to talk about, and I will share the screen, creating Giving Tuesday and end of year campaigns. So, Giving Tuesday is in 2 weeks. It snuck up on me. I will acknowledge that because I was actually thinking, and I hope that most people are not thinking this as well, is that Giving Tuesday is the first Tuesday of December. Well, this year we have that fifth Tuesday in November. And so because of that, Giving Tuesday actually will be fall in November instead of traditionally as it has December. So a little bit about the Business of Charity. We are an organization focused on helping nonprofits become fundable and sustainable through formation, infrastructure, administration, and grant writing. We actually started out as a grant writing firm only, and as part of that process, learned that many nonprofits, particularly small nonprofits and those who are BIPOC-led organizations, did not have some of the resources and tools of our larger counterpoints. And so because of that, we began offering some additional services, such as education like this, so that nonprofits can receive the information and then be able to move forward into that next phase or next level of nonprofit. There's actually a nonprofit life cycle. I won't do a deep dive into that, but there are 6 phases, starting with startup, emerging, adolescent, and many of the organizations are adolescents or startups even. And so we focus there to help them become, again, fundable. First of all, you have to have somebody want to give to you, and then sustainable, meaning that there is consistent cash flow coming in to meet the organization's needs. So that is where we find ourselves today. And of course, it is, as we talked about, Giving Tuesday and end of year giving. This is a great time for organizations to give back. And when I say organizations, I'm talking about businesses. For-profit businesses want to give to nonprofits at the end of the year. Small business owners want to have tax write-offs at the end of the year. And those individuals who exceed that tax threshold of using the and I forget the term, but where you have reached that threshold of, it's 12,000 as your tax credit, or if you are a couple, 25,000. If you don't exceed that amount, then giving over that doesn't make sense, right? And so that was the benefit of the 2017 tax changes for individuals, but for nonprofits, not so much. But the good news is that actually last year, and I didn't get a chance to find this infographic to place in the presentation, I will before I send this one out, giving actually increased last year. I know that there was so much going on with the pandemic, a lot of people lost their jobs, and so we do not want to negate that in any way. But for nonprofits, there was actually an increase in giving for a lot of the larger nonprofits. I won't say the smaller ones, but for the larger ones, they saw money coming in. So this is an opportunity for you to tap in and be able to receive some additional funding for your organization before the end of 2021. So there is a Giving Tuesday actually toolkit that is out there. I'm not going to do a deep dive into it. It is available if you just Google Giving Tuesday. It's there, but I want to talk about some of the pieces that nonprofits may not be thinking about if this is not a campaign that you have used in the past. So the first question that always comes up, right, from most nonprofits is, how much money should I be asking for? And so if you had to stop and think about what your request is going to be, and I've worked with a lot of nonprofits and they say, oh, it's whatever they can give me. But really what funders are looking for, donors are looking for, they're looking to you to say, I need X amount of money to be able to do X. Now, here's where we as small nonprofits, small business owners, even, I'm going to lump us all under in this particular category and throw us all under the bus. What we do is we don't talk about the impact of our giving or the request. We just say, I want money. And so what I have found and what you will see as we talk about the campaign is that if you talk about the impact or the outcomes of the giving, people are more likely to give to you. So when I say how much should you request, first and foremost, what is your budget? Now, I know this is a B word for a lot of people. They hate it. They don't want to talk about it. I myself, and I say this all the time to my clients, went to law school so that I didn't have to deal with numbers. I just shared in my live that after doing my minor was business administration, after sitting in a semester of accounting, I was like, I'm out. I'm not doing this. But guess what? It is what I literally do almost on a daily basis now. So you have to know your numbers to be able to make a request. If you don't know what your operation budget is, then you will not be able to tell someone overall what you need, what needs need to be met. So if you have a general idea of your organization's operation budget, not your program budget, that's a whole different issue. And many smaller nonprofits start out basically with a program budget. That is the cost it takes for you to operate your programs, whatever that may be. So, many organizations start giving out of a need, out of a desire to help. So for instance, I knew literally a CEO executive or CEO who started doing her program because she wanted to serve the homeless. And so she started serving sandwiches out the trunk of her car downtown Houston, and didn't really have an idea of what that budget looked like. That's many stories, not just that one. I know many who start serving from the trunk of their car, from their kitchen table, from their coffee table in their living room. And so they don't really know the cost. So you have to be able to put that into a budget. And your budget should consist of all your expenditures and revenues for that fiscal year. So if your fiscal year is a calendar year from January to December, everything that you're anticipating spending during that time should be in your budget. If you are an off year, and some nonprofits operate, for instance, on a federal fiscal year, which is from October to September of each year, great. But same thing, whatever your fiscal year, your budget should be inclusive of that information. And so when you're raising funds, calculate your budget being practical and realistic. So if you're, have an idea that you eventually want to have a $5 million budget, you need to be able to support that. And that's called a budget narrative. That's a whole different issue. I won't do a deep dive there, but what I will do is share with you a sample budget and how you can arrive at some of these costs. So this particular budget is one that I used for individuals. It actually is a baseline budget from the organization that I worked with. And so what you want to do, it has all your different categories of expenses in it. I will scroll up and you can see those: personnel, fringes, supplies, equipment, travel, other, and it's based on, I use it because you will see this budget primarily for government grants. Nonprofit foundations use the same type of format. So there are a lot of budget types out there. This one is simple. I will say that for the first time person who's creating a budget, this is a great place to start, because it will give you some basic thoughts about things you may not be capturing. It is also part of the toolkit that if anybody would like it, I will be happy to share it with you so that you can create that. But the reason why I brought it up today is because I want you to be clear that when you are creating your request for Giving Tuesday, you've thought about what your expenses are and how much you need to raise. So in this particular budget, the total expenses are just under $1.1 million. The total amount raised is just over 1.1, which actually gives them a surplus, which is a great thing. They're literally in the black. But you want to be mindful of the fact this particular budget includes a lot of grants. That's great. but grants go away, which is one of the reasons why this organization no longer exists, because all the grants that they had went away. $1 million worth of contracts, none of them were available. And so you still have to raise money through individual giving, through corporate giving, through foundations, things of that nature. So that is why we're here today, excuse me, and that is why Giving Tuesday and end of year campaigns are so important, because it raises money for the organization, which is called unrestricted funding. So the idea is that you want to make sure that when you have calculated all your expenses and your revenues, you're now saying, okay, we need to raise $1.1 million. How are we going to do that? Now, this particular organization, like I said, had a lot of grants, but we also had targets for different organizations. And I don't know if you're aware of it, but for individual giving, that actually usually makes up 70% of annual giving for nonprofits to charities, nonprofits, churches across the board is individual giving, 71%. So if you don't have individual donors giving to your organization, you have missed out on 70% of your organization's funding just off the top. So how do you arrive there? So for instance, with this particular organization, they had said $10,000 in annual giving. So you want to calculate, well, what does that mean for my organization? Do I know 1,000 people who will give me $100? Do I know, or rather 1,000 people give me $10? Do I know 100 people who give me $100? You can calculate it out so that that way you know how many people you need to target. So let's say you are trying to raise this $10,000 and you're saying, okay, I have a group of donors and I can look at my list and see that they've given me an average of $100. So I only need 100 people to give me that money. Now, I know I just said only. And so for some of you all, you may be thinking 100 people is a lot. But if you are promoting the organization using social media and your networks, and we're going to talk about that next, then this is reasonable and doable. So when you start to think about it from that perspective, then that helps you identify who you need to be able to reach out to. Same thing for your board members. You should have a target for them. Any local businesses that you're connected to or corporations, a target for them. We had a connection with churches. I know many of my nonprofit organizations also have connections with churches. So same thing. If you know that you can have 10 churches give you $400, then you just hit your target right here of $4,000. So identify your targets. And then once you've done that, then you can say, okay, I need X number of people to give me X number of dollars and I will reach my targets. So that's how you arrive at how much will someone share with me. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint presentation, if it will let me. Okay, that's interesting because I tested this out and it worked just fine, but it is not now. So I'm going to stop the share and go back into it. Technology. There we go. So when you are created your sample budget and you have an idea of how many individuals you need to approach, then you can talk about the next piece of it is who do you ask to give? So the answer to that question is those who have given to you before. Why? Because they already have an affinity. They like you. Whether they like you because they like you as an individual, whether they like your organization because of the mission, or whether they just want to identify a good, sound organization. Because you don't realize how many individuals will say, I'm not giving to X organization because their executives make X number of dollars. And so you want to make sure that you are just also a sound organization who has good accounting principles. Generally accepted accounting principles, GAAP, is what many individuals were looking at. They're also looking at how much administrative cost versus direct services cost. And so if you have a good sound budget, that will help you be able to determine who will give to you. So one of the things that you can identify is mapping your network. And how do you do that? You just simply go through your list of individuals who've already given to you and begin to talk to them. Don't ask them for more money first. Have that conversation with them about what your needs are. And we will talk about what that looks like in just a moment. But once you have mapped your network, and here is a map that I have adopted from Global Giving that you can also use. This is a great way for you to sit down and think about, who do you know? Because if you identify those individuals and talk about what they can share with you, then you can then make an appropriate ask. Now, notice this particular network map is not just about money. It's also about influence. It's also about those who care about your mission or passion. Of course, cash is there, but maybe you also need somebody who can give you some time, because maybe you need a great CPA, and so you need a CPA who's willing to give you some volunteer hours as part of your process. So, don't negate the in-kind giving. I know you need cash. That's the reason why we're here. It's the business of charity, but at the same time, you also need those individuals who are going to volunteer, because you can monetize volunteer hours. That's a whole different conversation. You're also going to look at those who give you other contacts as well as expertise. So again, this is available for you as well, for you to sit down, go through it, and see who you know, thinking about, first and foremost, those who've given to you already, plug them in, and then others who may be able to give to you who fall into these categories. So this is a great activity for you and your organization, your board, to sit down and complete together, to be able to know who you're going to give to. And so going back to, once you have mapped that out, it's interesting because I just attended a webinar last week and they were talking about the glitches, how they worked fine in practice, but totally different when you're live. Here we go. So you've mapped it all out using the network map. So now what? You want to begin to create your social media post. And I say social media, but I'm not going to forget the tried and true newsletter, whether that's digital, whether that's on paper. You have to be mindful of your generations. My mother just celebrated her 75th birthday yesterday, and my mother is a true baby boomer. When she says that she wants it on paper, she still writes checks. She still expects paper thank you notes. We've had this conversation several times this year about different aspects of the differences between generations and what they're looking for. But I also have a true Z in the house. I have a 23-year-old son. He doesn't care anything at all about a paper note of any kind. He's not going to write it. He's not going to send it. He's not going to ask you to send him one. And at the same time, a check, what's a check? I don't think that child has ever written a check in his life, let alone ever ordered checks. So when you are thinking about who you are trying to approach, going back to your network map, think about also how you need to approach them. Because for some of them, it will be social media. For others, it may be that paper newsletter that they receive in the mail that generates money for you. So don't, negate something as small as sending out a paper copy of your newsletter as well. But you want to make sure in your social media post or in your newsletter, you want to raise issue awareness. So whatever issue your organization is combating, you want to make sure that you have addressed that, you're talking about it, and you're making them aware. Because if I don't know that human trafficking is an issue in Houston, then how do I know I need to support your organization to combat it? Same thing about highlighting your testimonials for your clients. That helps them to understand you're not just in a space and no one is benefiting from the services you're providing, because it actually may touch them. One of the things that a board member said to me years ago when he was talking about why he served on the organization was because he was a victim of that particular issue. And he never really shared that information with anyone, but him sharing it with me helped me to understand why he was so passionate about the work we were doing. So highlighting testimonials will help connect individuals who may be in that same space, who maybe have overcome a similar situation, or just help, again, go back to raise that issue awareness that people are suffering, and because they're suffering and you're working in that space to help them, that they can support and give to you. And then the last thing, and this is where I have seen my true traction for my organizations that I've been working with lately, is discussing the impact of what your services do for individuals, what when your funding reaches the organization, how do you use that money to serve others? And so discussing the impact will help them also connect and say, oh, okay, this is more for those donors who say, okay, well, my money really doesn't help them. $1, $5, $10 doesn't really help the organization. So therefore I'm not going to give because I don't have enough money. But the reality of it is that even that dollar, $5, $10, $100 makes a difference for your organization. So share with them how that impact affects them. And so a couple of samples, and this one, you're probably going to be familiar with it because you see their commercials all the time, Save the Children. And so they are professionals, and I'm sure they have a whole team that just does this work. It's called the development department, who create campaigns to help individuals connect with them on different levels. So the first one we talked about it was raising awareness, right? So this is a prime example of raising awareness. Want to help make the world a better place for kids? And they talk about their challenge in raising money through a marathon or a walk. And so you can connect with them in this way. It's raising awareness. It's talking about how you can give to them. And so this post just came out this week, November the 5th. But another prime example is, again, highlighting that testimonial from a client. And so here they have a child who has drawn a thank you letter, and see, it's cute. It has a little cat on it, and actually he's a very good artist. And this literally has changed overnight because they just made this post 2 hours ago. When I looked at this yesterday, it was a different post, but still highlighting a child who's receiving services, and they're giving their testimonial. So prime example, and I've only talked about one organization. I could tap in and probably Google however many more organizations and find the same thing, that they have tapped into raising awareness based upon their organization or awareness of the issue for their organization. They have tapped into a testimonial. And here is another testimonial, and actually the one that I saw last night, where it talked about a child and her parents who are living in a boat because they can't afford a house. Can you think about this? I mean, just this alone, if I didn't think that this was part of my mission, I would want to give to this organization just to help this particular family. Now, I'm going to caution you, and I say this because now there is this new thing called poverty porn. And so there is that idea that if you place individuals on line and social media to highlight their circumstances, you want to make sure that you're not just using that to take advantage of the individuals. So be cautious about what you are promoting, but at the same time, be realistic and practical. So as a organization or as an individual who's come across this organization, I might give just because I saw the picture of this family, and this family looks like there's at least, 6 individuals here who are living in this, when they say boat, I think yacht. This is clearly not a yacht. This is a very small boat that they're living in. And so, those are the things that would capture someone's attention and say, okay, I want to give to them. So see, just here, there's 144 interactions with this particular post. And so you want to make sure that you highlight that. And then the other one that we talked about is impact giving. And I believe, and they have shifted this a little bit, but there was another post that highlighted the fact that if you give X number of dollars, you have worked with and saved X number of children. And so you want to use that to that effect. And so there's another sample that I have for you. So I'm gonna actually show that one because it also highlights impact giving. So going back, this is, now I understand completely what they were going through last week. So draft a donation request that demonstrates your impact to donors. And so you just saw examples of that. I was doing this over a decade ago, so this is not new. When I ran New Horizon Family Center, I put together a campaign in 2008 and 2009 that said for $50 or less than a movie night for a family of 4, New Horizon Family Center offers 1 night of shelter for a mother and her 2 children. That's a simple, straightforward, but you have to know on a practical aspect, what is your unit cost for that? So that goes back to your budget. You can calculate your unit cost based upon your total expenditures and divide that by the number of people that you intend to serve. So for another organization, matter of fact, they are located here in Houston, and it is okay for me to share their information because I will, full disclosure, let you know I am on their board of directors. And so this particular clinic provides free vaccines. And we calculated the cost for a current fundraiser that we're doing for the EACL. And basically for less than $5, the EACL will provide 52 Friday family nights of fun and 3 vaccines for a family without insurance. The cost of that is actually $240. And so if you think about it from that standpoint, that when they receive that donation of $240, that it provides vaccines for a family without insurance, it's a great connection for them. You're able to see the impact of what happens when you give your money. And that is important for many donors. They want to know, I'm not just giving into a hole, but I'm giving, and that giving has helped someone in some way. They can think later, okay, this family now has vaccines that otherwise would not have received it. So other examples of impact giving, I'm going to pull up Global Giving. Global Giving, if you are not familiar with them, is a website, or I say website, but it is an organization with an deep online presence that vets nonprofit organizations. So you have to go through a process to be included on their particular website. But when you do, you have the potential to raise a lot of money. And I won't say that it's going to happen overnight because I'm going to show you another example in just a second that will show you it doesn't happen overnight, but it happens consistently enough that it's worthwhile. So this is a plug for Global Giving. I am not an affiliate, so I will say that up front now, but I have worked with an organization that raised money on this platform, and it has been significant for them. So as you can see here, this particular project is what's called on their front page, has raised almost $700,000. Now, this may have happened over the process of a couple of year period, but still, when you're thinking about it from that standpoint, you are thinking that's a huge amount of money because this is unrestricted funding, not tied to anything. And how they recommend you do it, and what I love about it and what I see works is that they do it based upon giving levels that tell the donor the impact of that level of giving. So in this case, they start with $20, and it will fund a government school staff and educational aides, $20. And that's just one donation. You can do it monthly and provide that money as a recurring donation. And you really do want to have those recurring donations, even if it's a small amount. If I give you $10 a month, for a year, that's $120. It's $120 that may help you in this case have a classroom construction and furnished library and books and furniture. So helping them understand what that giving will do will also drive them to give that amount as well. So someone who says, well, I don't think my $20 is really going to help, can understand how, in fact, it will help. But at the same time, having those higher amounts so individuals can connect to and say, okay, well, I want to help them with the construction of a compound and a cycle stand and a school bus, then that's what I will give. So there's a story here, which we talked about, developing your story through your social media or your traditional giving platforms like newsletters, and then help them be able to raise money, share that information with your organization. So obviously you're not on Global Giving. How do you do this? You're just going to create a letter or a post that identifies some of these things. Here they have 10. You may only want to identify 3. So don't make it, feel like, oh, okay, I have to do all this work. You don't. You can keep it simple, but still be effective in raising money for your organization. So the other organization, I'm going to share that one with you. This is the organization that I actually worked with to help develop this campaign. I was the one that gave them the numbers because I was working as their grant manager and developing their budget. So we went through and identified 10 categories of where the giving would be able to help. And this was a nonprofit that helped domestic violence survivors. And so our campaign was around helping women flee domestic violence during COVID in 2019. I will tell you, and they have since raised the goal, because when I left, the organization goal was at 20,000. They've doubled it since that time, which is a good thing, because they have raised $13,000 of their goal. Now, to be on the platform, you have to raise $10,000 just first time through within a 2-week period. So that means that the additional $4,000 that they have raised has come since that time, when we did the initial campaign, over a period of about a year. Now think about it from the standpoint of, okay, they raised $10,000, but then now they've raised an additional $4,000 just from simply posting their information and encouraging individuals to give to them. So, they start with $10 for a pack of diapers. That's what we estimated was the cost for us to pay for diapers for a woman or a family staying in a hotel. $25 for a tank of gas, $50, and went back to my tried and true, paid for one night of hotels for this particular organization. Instead of shelter, we offered hotel, and then $100 for food, and on till we hit that $2,000 mark, and talked about what it would pay for, which was 200 hours of counseling, 10 months of a Zoom subscription. That was a $200 expense. And then 40 nights of safety, 40 times 50, 2,000, or 2 months of services for a woman fleeing her batterer. So this impact giving helped them to understand what they were giving. And the average donation, I will tell you, for this particular organization was $50 to $100 a month. And it would just be, we would never know when they were going to give. We would just receive a check or a direct deposit into our account at the end of the month. And so, we knew that they'd given, and there is a, Doritha Orion is the project leader. So she was the one responsible for ensuring that we sent out our thank you notes to recognize the donors. But at the end of the day, it was when the money hit the bank for me that I was like, oh, we've raised $500 this month. We've raised $1,000 this month from Global Giving. And so I wish them well. I could hope to see that they do hit their now new target of $40,000. Only $26,000 to go. Giving Tuesday is around the corner, and this is a great place for them to send out this link and have individuals raise money for them through this platform. But again, you don't have to be on this platform. You can be on any platform, including your website, to be able to make that delivery. So finally, you're just going to make that call to action. You're going to offer them the ability to give to your organization. So post your Giving Tuesday or end of year request on social media or through your newsletter, and make sure that those individuals have access to your organization's donation platforms. So I was literally on a website yesterday, and I was scrolling through it. It was a nonprofit link that someone had sent to me, and I got to the end of the page, and that's when their donation button popped up. I was like, almost amazed because it had not clicked beyond that point because I wasn't there to donate. But every donation button should be above. If you have to scroll, before you scroll, your donation button should be at the top of the page. So that's just something that you always want to make sure, make it easy for your donors to give at the end of the year. So if your donation button is not on your front page, at the top of the page, make that change before you start your Giving Tuesday or end of year request, because you want to make it easy. If it's difficult for them, they won't give. The other thing is you might want to have multiple medias or multiple ways for them to give. For the longest time, I did not recommend Cash App because it's just difficult to do peer-to-peer giving and track it, but it does allow you to track it. So if someone wants to do Cash App, by all means, have that set up, ready to go, so that they can give you a donation. Because again, we talked about those generational givers. My 23-year-old is going to Cash App you. My baby boomer mom is going to write you a check. Gen X is probably going to go to PayPal, or whatever else that they feel comfortable using, Stripe, or some of the other websites that they can click a button and give to you. There's text giving. So there's several ways that you can receive funds. Whatever is easy for your donor, that's what you want to be able to do. I actually had someone recently with another organization I'm working with, they didn't want to use PayPal. And so, because that organization was primarily tied to PayPal, we had to create a way, a digital way for them to give money. So have multiple digital methods of receiving donations. And that way, whoever is saying, oh, can I give you money using Zelle? By all means, let them Zelle you. So have it all set up and ready to go before you send out your request on Giving Tuesday. So you've got 2 weeks to get that done. So that brings us to, what if I'm not a 501c3 yet? Because I have several organizations who are like, oh, what can I do to raise money? Fiscal agents. And a fiscal agent is simply another nonprofit organization that agrees to serve and receive money for your organization. Now, I'm going to be frank. Do not just randomly go out there and find somebody who says they will accept your money. Make sure you all have a conversation about what that looks like. Is there going to be a cost involved with that? Because unfortunately, and we've all seen it, someone takes advantage of an organization and they don't receive their money. And so having a fiscal agreement in place means that you will be able to have a contract. Contracts are not a bad word for nonprofits. You need contracts. You need memorandums of understanding. That's a whole different deep dive, so I won't go there. But what I will say is that here is a simple fiscal agreement for you to be able to use if you choose to do so. This one is literally one I just took a time to Google. I have other MOUs that I have used as fiscal agreements or contracts. And so if anyone would like to have this document, definitely willing to share it and send it out to you all with a link to the PowerPoint as well. But the key piece is that you have an agreement in place that defines how you all will operate, meaning they're receiving the money and then they're going to give you the money. And in what time frame? Because you don't want that to be obviously 90 days, but maybe because of their accounting system, they need it to be 30 days. So have that conversation with them, have it all in writing so that everyone is clear. You know, what your timeframes are in terms of receiving money and payout of that money, why they're paying you the money, different things, because they have to answer for their accounting system as well when they're receiving money for someone else, as to why that's not their money. They have to answer to the IRS. So all of these things help cover you all as part of that process. So again, have this document and I am willing to share it with you if it is something that you need for your organization. So that brings us to the next way that you can raise money. I am an EACL licensee. We talked about that. The EACL is the Esports Amateur Competition League. They have a fundraising opportunity for nonprofits, and we are looking for 50,000 nonprofits to help them raise up to $38,000 a year. And one of the issues, again, is that many organizations don't have their 501c3s. That is not an issue for you. You can have a nonprofit fiscal agent. I have several organizations who are willing to serve in that role. And so you can come in and raise money, but at the same time, be able to seek your nonprofit status as part of that process. So if that's something that you're interested in, please reach out to me. I am happy to assist you, connecting with you and helping you raise that $38,000, because of course, who could not use that money? And that brings us to questions and answers. So does anyone have any questions that they may have?
I have one. I might have more than one. This PowerPoint will be available to us?
Yes.
Okay. Some of them didn't open. I didn't see the PowerPoint, but I didn't want to. But if you send it,
got it. Okay.
Yeah. But when you're talking about global giving, is there a charge for that?
No, it is free. Okay. So you can apply. They have what they call accelerators. And so they do. Last year, I'm not sure how many times they did them. In 2020, actually 2020, they did them, I believe, 4 times. This year, I believe they've only held 1 or 2. But you have to apply to the accelerator and then be able to be approved to participate. Okay.
And you know, when you're talking about the newsletter, that's something that we're going to incorporate this month. Was we're going to start a newsletter. And so I'm glad I looked at this, because one of the things was like, we have one person that's on our boards that's a cosmetologist, so she's going to do beauty tips. Then there was a section that was going to be testimonies. And so, yeah, so that's kind of verified, you know, what I said the newsletter should look like. It has to be geared toward our audience, which is girls, so it can be complicated and long, you know, drafting. But it has to be something that's going to reach them, the middle school, and not for the girls. So that's basically who it's for, not for the parents. And then have someone write a part on. We're going to do something like peer pressure. You know, have somebody write an article on peer pressure. So just so we can reach them at different stages, but yet get the message across that we may not be able to get across in meetings.
Absolutely.
Just want to be. So that was so good. And then when you talk about the donation, what do you think about if we had a donation button at the top and then one as well at the bottom? I've seen that before when I'm on pages, and then you have one at the top and one at the bottom.
Absolutely. That is totally acceptable. And there are even, you know, websites that your donation, you have a separate page that you go to that page and you are able to make donations, and they see the tab as well, even if they don't see the donation button. So yes, whatever makes it easy for them to click on it. But I will say that it is generally given advice that if they have to make more than one click, they will not give. So you want to make it clear when they arrive at your page, here it is. And so I can give right here.
Oh, and that was something when you were talking about Giving Tuesday and being in North Carolina, idea that I had that I'm putting in place is like, my birthday is this month. Actually, my birthday is the week of Thanksgiving. So what I was going to do is put a letter out, tell people, ask people that's connected to me instead of giving to me to give to the nonprofit.
Absolutely. That is a great way to give a campaign. And I didn't talk about connecting with Facebook. Facebook is a great way for you to connect as well. Network for Good is the agent, their fiscal agent, essentially, for the nonprofit giving. So what happens is that when you give money on Facebook, that money is funneled to Network for Good, who then tracks it and sends you back your money. Now, for
Okay.
new organizations, it takes somewhere between 90 days, 60 to 90 days before you see that first donation arrive.
Mhm.
After that, it arrives a little more quickly, I'd say 30 to 45 days.
Okay.
But there's still a process in there. And essentially, that's what they're doing. They're being your fiscal agent when you set up your nonprofit organization on Facebook. So I don't negate that at all, but sometimes people will say, well, I want to see that money a little more quickly. And so
Mhm.
that's where giving your button on Facebook or social media will allow them to give directly to you without funneling it through Facebook or other entities like, crowdfunding platforms like GoFundMe or CrowdRise. There's several out there.
Okay. All right. All right. I think those are what I had.
Okay.
That's the only thing I had written down. Yeah.
Okay. And one of the things that I forgot to talk about, but I will mention it, I did search a calendar that has the best times to post on social media using the different platforms, the primary ones like Facebook, Instagram,
Uh-huh.
LinkedIn, Twitter. And so that is also available if you would like that. I can also share that as well for you all because
Okay.
there are prime times to actually make those posts. And so you
Okay.
want to make sure you're capturing your audience. And one other thing I will throw in is that don't be alarmed if no one likes it, because what I have learned as part of my process is that even though someone may not necessarily like my post or click on my post, they saw my post and they
Right.
will come back later or they will make a donation without ever actually, necessarily connecting with you publicly via social media. I've had a lot of people say to me, oh yeah, I didn't, click on it, but I saw that and it was good information. And so that's why I reached out to you. So,
Right.
don't be afraid if someone doesn't necessarily interact with you on social media, though people tell you that they should. But at the
Mhm.
same time, practical experience has shown for me that even if they don't interact with me on social media, they have become clients. So great way to connect and raise awareness of issues and not be afraid that, no one's paying attention. They are.
Okay.
So any other questions or thoughts before we close out?
No.
Okay. I so appreciate you all coming out. And I did not post it. I guess I should. The next screen, which is contact me. I'll go ahead and be good and put it up. So for those who are seeing this as part of the replay, here are ways to connect with me. I'm assuming most people arrived at this point because they saw a post already on Facebook, but just in case, here is that contact information for you all on the screen as well, because I am going to post this later on YouTube. So for those who will see it there, they'll have access to that information. So thank you so much for coming in, spending your Saturday morning with me. For those who see this in the replay, thank you for coming in and spending this time learning about how to create your Giving Tuesday campaign. And I hope you are successful in raising money. Because I will say one of the first campaigns that I did simply by writing a letter to the local newspaper raised over $5,000 for the organization. And so these are effective ways to really raise money and still be able to thrive as well without spending a lot of money to do it.